Well, the time has now come for the principal talk of this graduation. It will be presented by a member of the governing body, Brother Mark Sanderson, and he has chosen the theme, "The desirable thing in a man is..."
It is as high as the heavens.
Is he talking about me every Sunday morning? This talk by Mark Sanderson, one of the most relevant leaders of the Jehovah's Witnesses, is kinda nuts because he felt in the freedom to say things about his followers that kinda show that Mark Sanderson doesn't look too favorably upon them. In a relationship with a narcissist, the narcissist doesn't really value you. In fact, will often consider you beneath them. And that is the same with cult leaders like Mark, but it had never been more obvious than here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's break this down.
Now, what is loyal love? Well, one of our publications says this: loyal love defies a concise definition in many languages. And I'd like to say English is one of them. Trying to find a concise definition is not easy, but I'll take a stab at it.
Wait, I thought the point of quoting your own publications was to redefine the word. Did he just quote that publication to say that defining the word is hard? Don't worry though, he is extra smart. He is going to take a stab at it.
The glossary of Bible terms in the New World Translation says this: loyal love refers to love motivated by commitment, integrity, loyalty, and deep attachment.
What? I thought Mark said he was going to take a stab at it because of how hard it was to define according to one of his own publications. But then he just quoted another one of his publications? This is so sloppy and pretty much guarantees that Jehovah's Witnesses stop paying active attention to this talk, which is all about loyal love. You know, the love that is kind of transactional and conditional that you have to have for everyone in this cult, but also has to be immediately removed if the person is removed from the cult. That one.
But perhaps the best reference that I found was the one that said this: the best way to grasp the essence of the biblical expression loyal love is by studying how God treated his true worshipers down through the ages. Isn't that true?
You mean like when one guy was trying to keep the ark from tilting over and accidentally touched it and God eliminated him because nobody touches his ark? How about that law that says that if your kid doesn't obey you, then you can just take him outside of town so everyone can stone them? Does Mark mean those? Weirdly enough, yes, that is exactly what Mark means. Jehovah's Witnesses believe in this weird fascist authoritarian version of God, Jehovah. Jehovah loved his people, but that didn't keep him from opening up the earth to swallow Korah's rebels for the mere crime of challenging Moses. That example is not just highlighted by this religion, but used as the biblical reason why you need to shun your kid if the elders disfellowship them.
The Bible tells us that his sons remained loyal to Jehovah and were blessed for it. That night, after the meeting, I told Ben about the text I received from Levi. I told him everything. How I miss Levi so much, but that I also wanted to be loyal to Jehovah, like Korah's sons. Ben admitted that he too had been struggling with feelings like mine. But then, he said something that I hadn't thought of. If we were to stand between Levi and the discipline he needs, we would in effect be blocking an expression of Jehovah's love from reaching him.
And this kind of love is shown in a very specific way.
Now, why is this an important topic for all of you who are graduating today? Well, let's consider 3 reasons. Here's the first. You have all been recipients of loyal love from others. Now, how did you get here to Gilead? Now, I don't mean how did you get here to the auditorium this morning, but how is it that you got to this point in your life that today you are graduating from the Gilead School? Who were the people that loved you? Who were the people that helped you? so that you could be here today, graduating? Who stood by you in good times and in bad times? Maybe it was the brother or sister who studied the Bible with you. Maybe it was the circuit overseer who encouraged you when you were young, or that older sister in the congregation that believed in you and encouraged you to pioneer or to put in your application for Bethel.
In a cult, love isn't expressed as normal love. It's expressed as you being pressured into doing more for the cult. Believing in someone means believing someone can do more for the cult. And Mark is telling cult members that peer pressure is not just love. It's the love that you need to reciprocate and feel grateful for. This is typical of these abusive groups. Like a relationship with a narcissist, being a member of these groups mean believing the abuse you suffer and the constant pressure making you feel perpetually inadequate and in need to do more is not just normal, it's actually love. Love that you must reciprocate with your endurance and your renewed efforts to do even more. But now it's time for Mark Sanderson to humble brag and self-congratulate, of course.
And never underestimate the power of a simple act of loyal love. You know, one day I suddenly began to think about a couple who had helped us so much during the court cases in Moscow. I decided to just send them a brief text message just to see how they were doing, to check on them, let them know I was thinking about them. And just a few minutes later, a text came back. Brother Mark, we can't believe you wrote to us right now. We were both on our knees, praying to Jehovah, begging him for some encouragement, when suddenly we heard, ding, on our phone.
We don't get to hear what the couple was going through or anything. They and their problems are not important. What's important is that Mark felt like he should send a message, just as a couple who follow him were having a hard time and praying to Jehovah for help. That's why I can't believe in a God like Jehovah. Imagine how weak a God must be for you to ask him for help. And the best he can do is a text from this sanctimonious fat fuck. Because that's exactly what Mark is suggesting with this example. He's suggesting that he felt the need to text somebody because they were praying to Jehovah and Jehovah influenced Mark. That's what he felt. This story isn't here to tell you how Mark helped two people. It isn't even here to teach you how to craft an encouraging message. No, it's here so Mark can self-congratulate for sending a text and to pretend like he sent the text because Jehovah influenced him directly.
People who have similar abilities, similar talents, similar interests. If you work in the service department, you're drawn to the circuit overseers, the missionaries, the special pioneers, the desk men. They're all wonderful.
This is a throwaway line by Mark, but it hides a disturbing truth. This is one of the reasons why you can't be a good person and be a Jehovah's Witness. The service department is the most evil department in the whole religion. That's the department that keeps this cult's secret database of mostly sexual crimes, even against minors. Elders and circuit overseers are like judge, juries, and executioners enforcing the rules. However, it's the service department that devises those rules, which include avoiding at all costs, involving or informing the police about the crimes committed by the followers. They don't just devise those rules by themselves. They devise those rules according to what the governing body wants, but they devise those rules nonetheless and translate them into actual written rules in the secret manual that elders have. The service department is a department that has to be called by elders in case of sexual crimes involving minors. Not so the service department can tell them to contact the authorities or so they can contact the authorities themselves, but so they can check how to better hide the situation from the authorities. So obviously, if you're a part of this monitoring and punishing little group, you will love the people who are like you. You love them so much, in fact, that you will be far more willing to hide their sexual crimes when they do them.
If you're a translator, oh, you love the translators. That brother helped to translate the Bible. My, right?
Who? Which brother? Their translation doesn't list a single translator. Who is the one who translated their Bible? And where are their ancient Hebrew and Aramaic credentials?
We all love those wonderful, capable people that we easily admire and look up to. But here's a question. What about all the faithful people? What about all the faithful servants of Jehovah that we just don't have that immediate connection with? Let me be far more clear. What about all the faithful people that are just plain annoying? You know who you are.
Okay, so Mark Sanderson just did a huge no-no in this religion. He admitted that there are people in the Jehovah's Witness religion that are annoying, or at least that he finds annoying. This goes against the toxic positivity of Jehovah's Witnesses because this is actually bordering on being honest. Their toxic positivity in this religion makes it so you need to like and befriend everybody. This not only ensures a strong community inside the religion, which is basically the only benefit you get when joining this or almost any other cult, but ensures something more sinister. Silence. If you're supposed to be friends with everyone in the congregation, then you aren't supposed to raise valid criticism against them. Nobody in the Jehovah's Witnesses will admit that, say, Stephen Litt's face is completely ridiculous, or that David's plane always comes off as pedantic, because the followers are not supposed to note that. They are only supposed to note the good things. But Mark here, in an attempt to be more memorable, goes against this notion and plain admits that there are annoying Jehovah's Witnesses. And to me, this is a huge tactical misplay that I can't believe Mark just did, because now Mark has given license to other Jehovah's Witnesses to admit that other Jehovah's Witnesses are annoying, and maybe even a couple of more slightly worse adjectives. And his justification? A Bible verse about Abraham that he completely misunderstood.
Just to be quite frank with you, the Bible is filled with annoying people. Now, we all love Abraham, right? We all love Abraham. But now, if you go to Genesis chapter 18, we're not going to read all of this, but I'm just going to remind you of this account that you know well. Genesis 18. And you know, we go down here and we hear Abraham praying to Jehovah. It begins about verse 24. And Abraham begins to go into this thing with Jehovah. Jehovah, what if there's 50? See? What if there's 45? What if there's 40? What if there's 30? What if there's 20? What if there's 10? That's annoying. It's just annoying. Sorry.
This is wrong on so many levels. Mark is obviously referring to the account of God telling Abraham that he decided he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham asks God what will happen if he found, say, 50 people that were good and worth saving, to which God says that he wouldn't destroy the city then. Abraham repeats those questions over and over again, going down and down in numbers until he gets to 10. Now, in Mark's reading of the story, this was annoying. God should never be questioned, just like Mark should never be questioned. God knows everything, and even asking him if he would change his mind if he found good people in the city that he wanted to destroy is wrong. This is more or less the reading that he teaches to his followers in the publications, except that's obviously taken out of context. First of all, because the context was that Lot, Abraham's nephew, had gone with his family to inhabit those cities. This happens right before this conversation between Abraham and God. God had sent angels to Sodom and Gomorrah to figure out if those cities deserved to be destroyed. That's where the biblical narrative picks up after this conversation, with the angels visiting those cities, because God sent them to figure out if there were maybe even 10 people worth saving. And then they find Lot and his family and help them escape the city in the nick of time, right as God was about to destroy them. I guess because there weren't 10, there were fewer than 10, so God was like, whatever. And second, because this is an older story from the Bible. The idea that God was all-powerful and all-knowing hadn't been developed yet. That's a more recent addition to his mythos. You see it right here in this story. God knows that those cities are inhabited by evil people, but he doesn't know the details. That's why after this conversation with Abraham, he sends angels to explore the cities to begin with, remember? When Abraham is asking God all these questions, Abraham is having a conversation with a somewhat minor God who didn't know everything and wasn't capable of doing everything. If you take that into account, suddenly the whole story makes a lot more sense. That's why God, before destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, sends the angels to check out the city. That's why the angels have to escape in the nick of time, because God probably didn't even know that they were still there, or that they had found a family of good people who are trying to escape. And that's why Abraham asks all of these questions, because he was talking to a powerful and violent entity that had decided to destroy the cities in which Abraham's family lived, even before checking if there were good people worth saving in there. But to Mark Sanderson, one of the most influential leaders of this religion, this conversation is there because Abraham was being annoying, just like all of those Jehovah's Witnesses he hates. And the story is about tolerating annoying people despite you being superior to them. He misreads another two examples of Peter being annoying, like when he betrayed Jesus. Apparently, what happened there is that he was being annoying to Jesus, and yet Jesus forgave him for it. And then he says this little gem.
Demonstrate loyal love, not just to those who you feel that immediate connection with, but to all the faithful ones that you will oversee and care for. Work to form a bond of love, even with the annoying ones.
He reinforces that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are annoying, but I found it very telling that he specifically focuses on the fact that him and his audience, which, remember, is full of new Gilead graduates, will be the ones in charge of those annoying people. And now, this talk makes more sense. In the pecking order, you are allowed to be dismissive and even slightly offensive to members of the cult who are in the lower pecking order than you, as long as your comments are to someone who is at your level. For example, two single members of this cult, especially who are women, cannot be dismissive or offensive to each other. They can tell each other that they find the other annoying. However, elders who are above regular Jehovah's Witnesses in the hierarchy can say to other elders that they find some regular Jehovah's Witnesses, like those two women, annoying. And that is a weird thing that happens inside this religion that I don't see pretty much anybody talk about, because elders can be pretty dismissive towards the congregation. It's almost even normalized at this point. But that way of acting goes all the way up to the governing body. Bethelites believe that they are way better than the people at a normal congregation because they are Bethelites and they are doing more. And the governing body believes that they are better than Bethelites and therefore everyone else because they are all the way on the top. And they can criticize the people that are lower in the pecking order than them, which is basically everybody. The same thing that happens with elders feeling like they can just criticize other people because they're above them keeps happening all the way up to the governing body.
People in your assignments need your loyal love. You see, the stated purpose of Gilead is to train men and women who can strengthen and stabilize God's people. Well, now, who are those people? Who are they? They're simple, humble, faithful men and women who are just trying their best to serve Jehovah.
This reeks of the covert way that the Jehovah's Witnesses use to be pedantic. Mark is speaking to his cult enforcers, and he's telling them that the brothers in the congregation are simple people who need their love. And sure, you might take that as a compliment, but doesn't that tie into what we were just talking about? Because people are not simple. People are highly complex and they need love in different ways. But that is not who people are to Mark. To Mark, the people he leads are just simpletons who you can just pretend to love. And the people who don't like that approach are just the annoying ones who just need to kind of tone out.
But this is what Jehovah instructs us to do at Zechariah chapter 7 and verse 9. Will you read it with me? Zechariah chapter 7 and verse 9. It says, "This is what Jehovah of armies says. Judge with true justice and deal with one another in loyal love and mercy." So Jehovah instructs us to deal with one another in loyal love.
Yeah, and it says something about judging, doesn't it? This is the verse that Mark takes the most out of context in this whole speech, because when he reads it like this, completely isolated from any context, it sounds like it fits this talk perfectly, doesn't it? The Gilead graduates are going to other places to stabilize congregations, which means they need to make sure all the rules that the governing body have come up with are followed. If a congregation is found to be out of line, the Gilead graduates will have to separate them, correct them, and maybe even judge them in a judicial meeting. What better verse than a verse that instructs them to judge and to love a people for this occasion? Except there's a reason why Jeff completely takes the verse out of context, because that's not what the verse is about at all. This verse comes when the Israelites had returned from exile and were rebuilding their society and the temple. The people had been asking whether they should continue their ritual fasts that commemorated the destruction of the temple. You know, they wanted to figure out if they should continue doing the same rituals that they have been doing before they went through all of this. God answers, not with the focus on rituals, but on ethical living and true justice. Check out what a far more competent translation of the Bible says in this verse. "And the word of the Lord came again to Zechariah. This is what the Lord Almighty said. Administer true justice. Show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other." The verse about judging isn't even about judging one another. It's directed to the Israelites as a whole, telling them as a people to be just, which is far different than what Mark pretended it meant. In these verses, God is essentially saying, don't worry so much about outward religious acts if your hearts are not aligned with justice, mercy, and compassion. This follows a very similar school of thought as other prophets of the time like Isaiah, Micah, and Amos, who claimed God was criticizing and condemning religious hypocrisy, the people who were caring more about rituals than about being just and merciful and compassionate. It's a call to ethical integrity, social responsibility, and inner righteousness, not just to ritual observance. And that's why this is completely taken out of context by Mark, because his religion is all about rituals. This Gilead graduation had everyone pose like they're about to take a class photo exclusively because they used to take a class photo to publish them in magazines before. They posed for a photo that nobody was going to take in the same old-fashioned class photo pose exclusively because that had become a ritual. And now they have to observe that ritual that they made up. This Bible verse is completely against the way that Jehovah's Witnesses do things, caring far more about the ritual and about following written rules. than about administering true justice, reporting sexual criminals to the police, talking to your disfellowship apostate son who is deep into depression due to being shunned, or refusing to remove someone from the congregation just because they unrepentantly took a blood transfusion to save their lives. Mark not only took this verse out of context, he twisted it so much that he pretended it meant almost the direct opposite of what it actually means. And he is supposed to be one of the most knowledgeable Bible experts in the world.
Well, what have we learned in this discussion? Loyal love is one of the most beautiful qualities of our amazing God, Jehovah. But Jehovah also expects that we are going to display loyal love to one another, that we will go through the photo album of our heart and remember those who have displayed loyal love to us, that we will loyally love all of those under our oversight, even the annoying ones.
He had to triple down on it, huh? This was a crazy speech filled with hidden meanings and slight insults, and starring the new license that Jehovah's Witnesses have to call each other annoying as long as they get along despite how annoying they find each other. I was originally going to include this in my analysis and debunking of the rest of the Gilead graduation, but it was so crazy that I just thought it deserved its own separate video with far more time dedicated to analysis and research to fully debunk it. However, the rest of the Gilead graduation is already posted on my channel, so if you like this analysis and want to see more, you can go check that out right here and consider supporting me like these guys right here, who are some of the amazing people who support me on YouTube or Patreon and who make it far more easy for me to spend days obsessing over a 20-minute speech given by one of the leaders of the most boring cult in the world.